just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall again.
All right, this is old Lonnie Jones again. I want to talk to you again. It's been a while since I sort of missed a couple of weeks there, so we're on episode 31, I believe, today. This is a old dreary afternoon on a Saturday afternoon here on the 30th of January, and like I said, I missed a couple of weeks on you, so I'm going to pick up and do a few more things, took a couple of more episodes for you, and it's all about what God's done for me and some of the things I've been through, and if it hadn't been for God, I definitely would not have made it. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about had a triple bypass, and I was still working downtown. I know in the past I've told you about working downtown at the high rise and at the assisted living place at 18 stories. I was working down there. I went to work down there in 2000. I worked down there for 6 years, and so I was working down there, and about, I guess, probably 6 months, something like that, before I was going to retire. I retired at 64 and a half years old. I was only 64 and a half years old when I retired. I wasn't a full 65, so I didn't have Medicare, but I was working there at the time that my chest started acting up on me. And I didn't know what a heart attack felt like or heart trouble felt like. I didn't know much of anything like that. And my chest was starting to hurt me, and I got real short-winded. And I was still working at the high rise, and I didn't know what was wrong or anything, but we had good insurance and so forth. So I went to the doctor and told him I was having a problem with my chest, and they did an x-ray on me and told me there wasn't anything wrong with my chest. So then they went on and proceeded to have me take the stress test. And everybody my age knows what a stress test is. They carry you into the clinic or carry you into this place, and they take your blood pressure and your pulse, and they put you on a treadmill and run you to death and all that type of thing. And here I am, 64 years old, and so they put me on a treadmill, and I couldn't go very long on the treadmill till I just run totally out of breath and everything. And yet this is supposed to tell them that I do or do not have anything wrong with my heart or whatever, which in fact, after going through all that, they come up with no answers whatsoever other than I was running out of breath. And my chest felt real tight, and then no one seemed to get alarmed over it. So I went on and kept on working, and it increasingly got a little worse as I went along. So about 4 months later, I actually retired. Well, that was in 2007. I retired in 2007, I believe around March, because after I retired from the high rise, my insurance carried on for 6 more months. And at the end of 6 months, I was going to be turning 65 anyway, and I would have Medicare. So during this time between me quitting and me turning 65 years old, my chest went hurting pretty bad, and I sat down. I'd been to church on that Sunday, and everybody's listening to me is not listening. I didn't say a word about God hardly, except when I sat down here. But all the time, these things are going on. God is with me the whole time, because I was warned. I warned the doctors. The doctors did practically basically nothing about it, just what they knew to do, or they didn't do what they could have done to found the blockage. I'm sure they didn't. They have some kind of a test that they run a thing up one of your veins and go in behind your heart and see if you've got these blockages. Well, they didn't do that. Well, meanwhile, I retired before my 65th birthday, and I retired, I believe, like I said, in March. And I went home because I had Larry's Granite Garage. It was up and running strong, and I was building rooms and buildings on the in here and everything. So one Sunday I got home from church and I sat down in my chair, and I couldn't stand it any longer. I couldn't get comfortable in no kind of way. It felt like there was an elephant standing on my chest. It felt like and I didn't even feel like driving myself to the hospital. So my ex-wife and another lady was out together, and I called my ex-wife to come and get me and carry me to the doctor. So they come and got me one Sunday afternoon and carried me over to Skyline, a hospital, and they carried me in there. Of course, they dropped my heart rate and dropped my blood pressure and all that stuff, and they didn't really do anything but keep me overnight because I wanted to go to Centennial, because at the time my heart doctor was at Centennial, and the doctor done his surgical work for him was in Centennial. So I wanted to go to Centennial, so they carried me later on that night on out to Centennial. Well, as soon as I got to Centennial, they did an arteriogram, I believe is what you call that. It's where they run up in behind your heart. If they can't see anything in front, they run at it up one of your veins, and they can see what's behind your heart. As soon as they did that, they came back and told me that I needed a triple bypass. So that I had blockage. And 3 veins had 3 blockages. So they immediately sent me for the next day to have surgery. So now God had taken care of all this stuff. I never actually ever had a heart attack. I never got my heart damaged in no kind of way. So God was with me, looking after me, got me to the hospital, and then got me to the proper hospital that I wanted to go to, and that my surgical doctor was there. So, and now remember, I haven't turned 65 yet, so I'm still on the insurance from where I had retired from. So they did the heart surgery, and everything just went beautiful. Everything went beautiful. I woke up about 10 o'clock the next morning, had these 2 big tubes sticking out each side of my chest here, and that was for drainage. Of course, I didn't know what it was for myself, but when I woke up, I looked up and it was 10 o'clock in the morning. So I have no idea what time the doctor did the surgery. But let me back up a little bit and tell you about just before I went into surgery, they sent him a black guy in, and he was the one that done the shaving you and everything, make sure that you was shaving, and he prepared you for your heart surgery. Well, as he was rolling me down the hallway, he said, "Well," said, "son, may never see you again. You may never come back." And that's a heck of a thing to say to somebody that's about to have heart surgery. But never once was I ever scared or worried. Not once. Wasn't then and not now. Anyway, God stayed with me through the surgery and everything. Woke up 10 o'clock next morning. My mouth was dry as a bone. And I had these 2 nurses, the sweetest things you ever seen in your life. I explained to them about my surgery, about my mouth being so dry and everything. And I want you to know, every hour they would bring me a popsicle, one of those ice popsicles on a stick. And they kept my mouth moist all day long. I never did get thirsty because they kept feeding me these icicles. And one of them being a banana, and then they'd bring me a strawberry. They just kept, no questions asked. Most wonderful 2 people I've ever met in my life. And so these 2 tubes were sticking in coming out of my stomach on each side here. And about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they said, we're gonna have to take these tubes out of your chest in about an hour. So we're gonna give you a little something here in your, dropping down in whatever it was that's coming. I don't know what it was giving me, but I was in no pain ever. Never even taken an aspirin. I was in no pain, like I had never been operated on, like nothing at all was wrong with me. And so they put this stuff in there, and this IV started dropping in me, and I never got sleepy or anything like that. But about 3 o'clock, about an hour later, they both come in there. 2 of the nurses came in there and opened up my gown here and took tape off from around these 2 tubes, was sticking in me. And they both looked at each other and they said, now on 3, we're gonna pull these tubes out. And you'll be fine, telling me that I'll be fine. They had to pull these 2 tubes out. So on 3, we're gonna pull these tubes out. They said 1 and pull the tubes out. They didn't say 3. They just said 1 and pull the tubes out. I never felt those tubes come out of me. They put a piece of gauze and a piece of tape across those 2 holes, which was about big around as a dime. I never once felt any pain ever. All I was by then is I was starving to death. I was hungry. And so about 4 o'clock, they carried me up to my room and told me that they would be feeding me about 5 o'clock. And I was hungry. So again, I never took an aspirin. Not once did I ever hurt in no kind of way. And most surgeons take a piece of a blood vessel out of your leg and use it in your heart. My doctor took nothing out of me. I don't know how he fixed me. I don't know nothing about nothing other than the fact there was nothing taken out of my leg. And I was in there with people that had heart surgery, from other doctors that had veins taken out of their legs, and they were hurting worse. Took them longer to get well taking the vein out of the leg than it did for them to get well with the heart. But they never took anything out of me nowhere that I know of to fix my heart. But I had a triple bypass with absolutely not 1 ounce of pain till this day. Till this day, no pain. This was 2007. Well, 2007 is when I had the triple bypass. And I come out of that hospital, my sister and my nephew come and got me and carried me out to my sister's in Ashton City. And I spent, I believe it was 10 days with her out there. And I was up and walking around. We went to Walmart the next day after I got out of the hospital. I went to Walmart with them and sat on a bench, walked around a little, sat on the bench till they got done shopping. We went back home, and we did that about 3 times a week. And never once did I ever hurt in no kind of way. But I spent about 10 days with my sister, and at that time, Larry's grand old garage was sitting still, idle, doing nothing. And I had added, I believe, a piece on the end of the building here, and it wasn't hardly complete. So I was anxious, of course, to get back to Larry's Grand Old Garage and get it back up and running again. And all this time, God was taking care of me. Period. I mean, it was period. Only through the grace of God, I did not have no pain. It was nothing. My heart surgery was like, it was absolutely nothing. The hardest part was being in the hospital and couldn't get out till I had to, until the time to get out. That was the hardest part of all, because I hate those hospital beds. You can't get comfortable in one. So that was a great ordeal for me, and again, God took care of me from the time that I was warning the doctors there was something wrong in my chest, and it took me having to carry myself or get myself carried to the emergency room, almost about ready to pass out, before I could get enough attention for them to realize I had heart problems. So anyway, we went on through the whole thing, went to my sister, spent 10 days out with my sister, and I came. I was supposed to have stayed out there longer than that. I was supposed to recuperate, and I wasn't supposed to pick up 5 pounds, actually, of no kind of nothing. And the 10th day was up at my sister, and I told her, I said, I'm going home. I said, I feel good, there's nothing wrong with me, and I'm going home. And the first thing when I got home, now they brought me home because my truck was here and everything, my vehicle. So they brought me home, and the first thing I did, I'll never forget it as long as I live. The first thing I did, out here at the corner of my garage, there was a concrete block that needed moving. I don't know what a concrete block weighs, but it's a whole lot more than 3 or 4 or 5 pounds. The first thing I did when they left is I walked out here and looked the thing over and reached down and picked up this concrete block and put it where it needed to be. I never once not pick up anything I wanted to pick up. I've got staples in me, look like hog rings, and I'm glued together right now. I got hog rings in me, and I'm glued together. But never once once I came home after 10 days, never once did I not pick up what I wanted to pick up, move what I wanted to move, nail what I wanted to nail, screw together what I wanted to screw together. I never changed the way I was doing before I went into the hospital. When I come out after 10 days, I went right back to doing the same things I was doing prior to that. If you think God has not got you by the hand, when you're not supposed to pick up 3 pounds, you're not supposed to drive. And I went to the store that afternoon in my own truck. It felt a little funny getting in there driving, but I didn't feel uneasy or worried about it. I just got in my truck, went to the store, went to Lowe's, come back, and did whatever I needed to do. And when you have a triple bypass and you're gone from home for 10 days for the triple bypass, you come back home and you continue your life on as though nothing had ever happened. You can't tell me that God's not got his hand on you. He's looking after you. Because it would have been very easy for me to have ripped my chest open and been back in the hospital and maybe kill myself. But I never thought about stuff. I never thought about anything like that. It didn't hurt me to lift what I lifted. I knew I wasn't supposed to do it, but I gave it a tug and it didn't bother me, so I did it. And there's no way in the world that anybody can't tell me that God carried me from noticing my chest was hurting all the way through my surgery and all the way back to my home and let me go back to doing the same things that I was doing when I left there. And anyone says God has nothing to do with that, they need to stop and think. They need to look at their own lives and see what happened to them yesterday. What's happening to them today? What happened to them last week? And they'll find God somewhere in there. They will find God in there. He's entwined right in your life, my life, and everybody's life. He is. We are His children. And He looks after us. And as the old thing says, like, in mysterious ways, I guess you might say, is how to handle that. But He took care of me of my insurance. My heart surgery cost me $800 out of my pocket. Because He allowed that, basically, got to think about this. Basically, He let me have that heart surgery before my insurance ran out and went over into Medicare, which might not and probably would not have paid as much. Now, see, you don't think of little things like that. Who would think that just prior to your insurance running out, while you had good insurance that take care of everything, that you would have a major operation like that? He could, if He didn't care about me, He could let me have it when I didn't have no insurance. In fact, I'm going to tell you about one. I'm going to tell you another surgery that I had long before this one. And I believe in one of my episodes, I mentioned it just a little bit. I mentioned about having a perforated ulcer. I believe that in one of my episodes that I mentioned having surgery where aspirin, I wasn't eating enough, and that's back when I was drinking, and I wasn't eating, and the aspirin made a hole in my stomach. And I think that I told about that, but what I want to tell you, I'll tell you that in the next episode. But God allowed me to have that operation, and I'll tell you in the next episode exactly how that came about as well. Because this episode, we're gonna have to get together here to sing a couple of songs for you, and on this is episode 31, and what we'll do is we'll see you in church Sunday morning at the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church at 101 Flat Ridge Road in Goodlettsville, Tennessee. We'll see you there on Sunday about 11 o'clock, and we'll just have a big old time and listen to the preacher. And right now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do you a couple of real good numbers. Bluegrass could be as good country. I'm not sure. We're going to talk about it and see what we're going to do. But we're going to do you a couple of numbers right now, and I'll see you in episode 32. And I'll tell you what else God did for me in the way of insurance and another major operation. I think I told you about the operation, but don't think I told you about how it got paid for. Only through the grace of God did it get paid for in the way it did. So we'll see you Sunday morning, 101 Flat Ridge Road. And we'll be, right now we're just going to do a couple of numbers for you. See you on episode 32. Okay? Thank you. Now we're going to do one called Old Home Place, the Key of G. It's been 10 long years since I left my home in the hollow where I was born, where the cool front eyes make the fire go bright. Box hunter clothes is home. I fell in love with a woman from the town. Thought that she would be true. I ran away to Charlottesville, working a sawmill too. What have they done to the old home place? Why did they tear it down? in the town. Well, my girl ran off with somebody else. Arrow took all my pain, and here I stand where the old home stood before they took it away. Now the geese fly south, the cold wind blows. Sit here and hang my head. I've lost my love, I've lost my home. Now I wish that I was dead. What have I done to the old home place? Why did it tear it down? And why did I leave a plow in the field? Look for a job in the town. What have I done to the old home place? Why did they tear it down? And why did I leave a plow in the field and look for a job in the town? And why did I leave a plow in the field and look for a job in the town? Okay, here we go.
Somebody robbed the Glendale train this morning at 5:30. Somebody robbed the Glendale train, I swear. And they cleaned up with 16 G's and left 2 midnight poles. Somebody robbed the Glendale train and made off with the gold. He kissed
Good job, Eric.
Jesus died on the cross from a dogwood tree. He gave his life and soul just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall